Visit to New York Wednesday to inspect security measures in advance of the trials. This all comes one day after former Vice President Dick Cheney said that trying KSM in New York could make him more important to radical Muslims than even Osama bin Laden, who was the mastermind, of course, behind 9/11. Here to make their case, Mike Stark, blogger for the progressive website FireDogLake.com, and John McCormack, deputy online editor for the conservative Weekly Standard. John, why are these Republicans so afraid of this?
Well, I think it sets a very dangerous precedent to treat acts of war as regular crimes and to treat terrorists, jihadists caught on the battlefield, as criminals who deserve all the rights of Americans in a civilian court of law. This is unprecedented throughout history.
Why don't Republicans trust a federal judge? Why don't they trust a federal judge to be able to make sure that it's a fair trial, but that they don't get a platform to spew their hatred, that they don't get this sort of idea that they're going to have this megaphone? I mean, all of that is going to be up to a federal judge. Do the Republicans not believe in the justice system?
Throughout history, the proper place to try those caught in the battlefield is a military tribunal. In a military tribunal, you have it's much easier to keep classified information secret. In a court where they have all the rights of American citizens, where they have all the rights of American citizens.
It's not fair to say that this has only been done in military trials. There have been nearly 200 people who have been tried in civilian court for acts of terror. Moussaoui, John Lind, you could go on and on. There are a lot of people who've been involved in Al-Qaeda who've been tried and convicted in civilian court. But Mike Stark, your view on all of this?
I just think it's kind of crazy. I mean, these folks are, one of the suggestions they're making is that we're opening ourselves up to more terror by trying these folks in New York. We're inviting terrorists in to blow up these court buildings. Well, they blow up the court buildings because we're doing the right thing and offering these guys a trial, but they're not going to blow up the court building of John Yoo, where the Obama administration just filed a form saying that, this is the John Yoo that said we could crush terrorists' children's testicles if we needed to. It sounds to me like if the terrorists had any sense at all, they'd be blowing up that building, not the building where we're doing the right thing.
You know, Mike, I've heard from a number of New Yorkers today who find it particularly ironic and infuriating that a congressman from Iowa or Minnesota or Arizona is somehow telling New Yorkers that they need to be afraid.
Listen, it's a show. The Republicans they're the party of Glenn Beck and Rush Limbaugh. Glenn Beck and Rush Limbaugh throw the shiny ball, the Republicans go chasing it. They have no influence, they have no power up here on Capitol Hill. They're a dead party beholden to a bunch of teabaggers, and this is what they're reduced to. I mean, they're making up things for themselves to do so that they have something to do because they're irrelevant up here.
John, I want you to respond to that because many are wondering what is next. I mean, will you have different Republican congressmen calling random news conferences up until and during this trial? What do they do next to show that they have power, or rather than just being ranters?
Well, I think that this is the beginning of a national campaign to encourage members of Congress to pressure President Obama to reverse this decision. This decision isn't set in stone. The buck ultimately stops with the president, and he could decide to transfer this to a military tribunal where these jihadists won't have as much of a platform to preach jihad, and they won't have as easy of a time of revealing sensitive and classified intelligence information.
But to be clear, John, again, they're not going to be able to do that unless a federal judge says that they can. But here's the larger point.
No, they're lawyers. They will have lawyers.
They're going to be able to argue that, but a judge is going to decide. But here's the larger point. Does it do the GOP any good to be the party that is somehow frightened or fearful?
David, I was in New York on Saturday, and there was a rally of 2,000 New Yorkers, and one of them was this guy named Peter Regan. He's a firefighter. His father died on 9/11, and Peter is now a fighter himself after serving 2 tours of duty in Iraq. And he made these substantive public policy arguments against trying these terrorists in a civilian court, these terrorists who have committed acts of war. Treating terrorism, an act of war, as a crime sets a dangerous precedent. It sets the clock back to September 10th, and I think that you should talk to these New Yorkers who were there. 2,000 of them. This is just the start.
Oh, I talked to them, and there are just as many, John, to be fair, there are just as many who believe that this is the ultimate way to honor those who fell, is to say, you know what, American justice works, and we're going to get these guys tried and convicted just blocks from this deadly attack. But Mike, you get the last word.
Yeah, I just want to say that the first people that stake a claim to American exceptionalism are the first people to say that we should continue our practices of torture, we should continue denying people their day in court, the very things that make America worthy of its claim to American exceptionalism. You just can't have it both ways. We're either exceptional because we do the right thing, or we're not.
Mike Stark and John McCormack, passionate arguments all the way around, and we always appreciate both of you coming on the show, and we appreciate you coming on today, and thank you.